I was talking with a friend recently about boundaries, and it made me think of some of the really common misunderstandings that people have about boundaries. These misunderstandings are what create a lot of the problems that people have, but they also lead to some of the common complaints that you'll hear, like how people are weaponizing boundaries and misusing therapy speak as a way to control other people. The big misunderstandings are first, that boundaries are requests. Then second, boundaries create separation between you and other people. Third, boundaries need to be respected in order to be effective. And fourth, once you've set the boundary, your job is done. You just tell the other person, that's your boundary. There, you did it. Now, none of those things are true. And we can walk through my friend's example here to explain what I mean. They were having a really hard time setting boundaries with their mom, who they thought was being excessively nosy and invasive about their romantic relationship. They had communicated, hey, I don't like it when you ask invasive questions or express a lot of critical opinions about my relationship, and that felt like a boundary to them. But their mom just kind of kept doing it, so they felt stuck. I set this boundary, she wouldn't stop, now what do we do? There is a difference between a request and a boundary. A request is something you ask of other people. Saying, Mom, I don't want you to ask me any more invasive questions about my relationship is not a boundary. That's just a request. It's also got a lot of ambiguity to it. What's an invasive question? Who decides what an invasive question is? How much room do we have for the person saying, well, I don't think that was a very invasive question. Now we're in negotiation. And there's a place in life for doing some negotiation, but you can't live in negotiation, particularly with people who, to quote Chappelle's show, are habitual line steppers.
He's a habitual line stepper.
And this is where context comes in. This person loves their mom. They want to be able to stay in a relationship with her. They don't want that relationship to revolve around something that frustrates them whenever they talk about it. But the mom doesn't want to change the behavior. She doesn't want to change. I don't want to screw up my relationship with my mom. Now what do we do? This is the whole point of boundaries. An effective boundary is something you make with yourself. It's a statement of what you will do and will not do in order to stay sane. This means that in order to be effective, boundaries need to be something that you have near total control over. They can't be dependent on the behavior of another person. So in this case, an effective boundary could be, when we start talking about my relationship, I'm not going to engage my mom about it. She says what she says, I smile and nod, and I try to change the topic as quickly as possible. If that doesn't work, you could then escalate the boundary to, I don't talk with my mom about my relationship. That is something that you have total control over. She actually can't stop you from not talking about your relationship with her. She can make your life difficult. She can talk at you about the relationship. She can express views about your relationship, but you are the one who is in control of whether or not you talk about the relationship with her. Now, as a part of this, there could absolutely be a place for clear communication with your mom of how you feel, of why you feel that way, and of the behavior that you're going to be adopting from now on. It is very likely that this boundary is going to be tested. The mom will probably ask questions about the relationship. She will probably complain about how you are icing her out. She could throw a full-on fit about it. But if you're an adult, she cannot make you talk to her about the relationship. You are in control. That's a good boundary. Sometimes boundary testing becomes chronic enough that you need to establish a boundary about the boundary testing. For example, Mom, I love you. I want to have a great relationship with you. Talking about the relationship just creates conflict between us. And I've mentioned a couple of times now that I don't want to talk with you about it anymore. But it feels like you're still trying to talk to me about the relationship, and I can't stop you from doing that. All I can do is control myself. And if you keep trying to talk with me about this, it's going to make me want to talk with you less. If you don't support this boundary, I'm going to need to create some more space. The number one thing that people misunderstand about boundaries is where they're set. They're not set externally. They're not made with other people. They're actually set with ourselves. The number two thing that they misunderstand is people think of boundaries as removers of relationship. They think of a boundary as something that you have with people that you want to push away or that you want more separation from. Sometimes that's true, but I actually think that that's the less common case. And those are certainly the easier cases to deal with. Most boundaries are actually set with people that we want to maintain closeness with. Boundaries are in the service of relationship. This person wants to stay in relationship with their mom. They love their mom. They care about their mom. Their mom is not an abusive person, right? They want to maintain that relationship, but her invasive questions are getting in the way of that. And she hasn't demonstrated any interest in changing that behavior. This boundary around talking about the romantic relationship is what allows the person to stay in relationship with their mom. It's rare to have any relationship in life where you like 100% of the other person. Whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a family relationship, people do stuff that bugs us. This is normal. And a certain amount of being bugged by other people is just the cost of relationships, right? Annoyance is the price we pay for community is a post that went viral on the artist formerly known as Twitter a little while ago. And it is incredibly uncommon to be friends with somebody who never rubs you the wrong way. A lot of that rubbing we can just deal with. There's a phrase from Terry Real, he's a legendary couples therapist I've talked to a couple of times, that I love. Normal marital hatred. Even the people we love piss us off from time to time, and we have to learn how to deal with that. But sometimes there's so much friction around a particular issue that it makes us not want to be around the person anymore. We're moving into distance with them because of this issue. And this is a great opportunity for a boundary that's not in the service of distance, it's in the service of more connection. This is a boundary that could save your relationship. A really common example of this for people is issues around substance consumption, particularly alcohol, because alcohol is such a big part of the social fabric, at least in the United States. And it's pretty common for us to have friends that we like a lot when they're sober, but we don't like so much when they're drinking. We can't stop them from drinking. We can make a request, we can say what we'll do if they drink around us, but we can't stop them. So an effective boundary with that person isn't you can't drink anymore, because that's not a boundary that you're capable of maintaining. And people will then say things like, I set a boundary with them, I told them not to drink, and they just kept drinking, they won't stop violating my boundary. That's because stop drinking is not a boundary. It's a request. You're trying to control their behavior rather than focusing on your own. Here's a better one. Hey, I like you. I want to be able to stay in this relationship with you, but this just isn't working for me. It makes me uncomfortable when you drink, so in the future, if we're at an event together and you start drinking, I'm going to interact with you less. And if I can't do that, I'm going to politely leave. I'm not going to make a big stink. I'm not going to tell you about how you're a bad person. I'm just going to leave. All I can do is control my own behavior. Now that may not sound like you, right? And you don't want to come across like you're trying to therapist speak other people, and you've got to find a way to put this into language that's authentic for you. But the big idea here is that there are basically two possibilities when we're setting a boundary. The first is that we're doing it with somebody that we do not want a relationship with. Estrangement could be an example of this. The second group, which is way more common, is that this boundary exists because we want to maintain a relationship with that person. So the secret sauce of this whole thing, the hidden foundation of the second group of boundaries, is that we're on the same team. We both actually want the same thing. You and your friend who you think drinks too much, you both want to stay in relationship. You and your mom who's getting nosy, you want to stay in relationship. That's the hidden model. So this is a question about how do we get on the same team? Boundaries are the space that you need to love another person. Presenting it that way can really take a lot of the topspin out of the whole thing. Because all of a sudden, this becomes more about asking, okay, how do we problem solve this thing together? What compromises can we both make here in a world where you don't want to stop drinking and I don't want to be around you when you're drinking? And yeah, sometimes this is going to be with a person who is unwilling to compromise. That's really okay. You can still have a very effective boundary with somebody who has no interest in respecting your boundaries because, again, that boundary is not actually with them. It's with yourself. Now, the fourth thing that people get wrong about boundaries is that boundaries are not a one-time thing. They are not something where you communicate them to somebody that, hey, this is my boundary, and then they don't respect that boundary, and then you're like, surprised Pikachu face, right? Boundaries are not passive, and they are not set it and forget it. They are an active process that you maintain through your behavior. They take work. If the boundary gets to the point where it's taken too much work, and the person is such a habitual line stepper that the boundary is actually making the relationship even worse than it already was, well, then you're in a situation where you have to take a step back and go, okay, does it make sense for me to keep on doing this? I need this boundary for this relationship to be healthy, but I don't want to do that much work. And that's a spot where you can talk about that with them if you have that kind of relationship where you can talk with them about those sorts of topics. Or you can just decide for yourself, you know what, I'm going to need to escalate this boundary a little bit all the way up to taking some space from this person for a while. This kind of approach to boundaries removes so much of the criticism about excessive boundary setting or boundaries being these kind of control plays that we make with other people, because boundaries are hard for the person who sets them. They make their life smaller in at least some ways. We don't want to be in a situation where we can't be around our friend. They're our friend. We don't want to be in a situation where we can't talk to our mom. They're our mom. We want to be able to talk to them about anything. But we recognize that the cost is greater than the benefit. And we go, you know what? It's just not worth it anymore. So I'm going to remove this thing. I'm going to pare my life back a little bit in order to make it better long term. But that is still a cost. You're paying a toll. Demands are really easy. Boundaries are work. So I get people having a problem with entitlement or excessive unnecessary demands or people kind of shrinking away from normal relationship friction. I agree. I think that's probably pushing it too far most of the time. But again, you're not describing a boundary. You're just describing somebody being excessively touchy and making requests in a kind of unskillful way. And in a weird way, the problem here was probably a lack of effective boundary setting. If the person had been able to figure out their internal boundaries, commit to them, and express them to others in an effective way, they might have actually been able to preserve that relationship. I hope this video was helpful. I don't normally do videos like this. If you would like to see more of this from me, please let me know. Leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, all the things that people tell you to do on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps me out. And if there are other topics that you guys would like to see me talk about in this way, I'd love to hear about it from you. Until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.